Welcome. I'm so happy you're here because I'm excited to share with you a few things that were absolute game changers for me when I was healing from a pretty epic trauma. So, in case you don't know my backstory, I started my intentional healing journey about 6 years ago after surviving kidnapping, rape, and attempted murder at 37 years old. But that was not my first brush with trauma. In fact, I had been suffering from complex post traumatic stress for most of my life as a result of childhood sexual abuse that started when I was 4 and lasted until I was about 13 years old. Now, this affected my physical health, my ability to focus in school, my job performance suffered, and I struggled with financial stability and forming healthy relationships. I definitely couldn't see the forest for the trees. I was living one crisis to the next. And because of this, I was completely blindsided by a jealous ex boyfriend who held me captive for 4 days, beat me, raped me, and ultimately tried to kill me. I survived, but the fight was not over. It was a huge wake up call for me. My trauma was affecting my whole life in ways I couldn't see, but everyone else around me could. They had labeled me as a flake. They called me incompetent or dismissed me altogether. I had some pretty big goals and dreams, and I worked really, really hard, but it felt like no one ever took me seriously until I finally started to understand why. Now, I learned exactly what I was doing wrong and how I was putting my energy into the wrong things. And this training is going to help you understand why you feel stuck. And it's going to help you shift your focus to the right things so that you can finally heal from your trauma and finally be able to do, have, and be everything you want in life. Once I figured this out, I literally changed my entire life in just 10 months. My CPTSD diagnosis erased. I was healthy again, fully recovered from the attack, but I'd also gotten my life together. I started my own business, I tripled my income, and I'm in the healthiest relationship of my life. And I finally have the energy and confidence to pursue my dreams. I'm happy and I'm so proud of myself. And that is not something I had been able to say for the first 37 years of my life. Now, the best part is I get to help other women heal their trauma and find their happy place. And I want that for you too. So, first things first, let's clarify something. I want you to know you're not broken. You're not damaged goods. You're not stupid. You're not lazy. You're not incompetent. And you do not have to be stuck like this forever. I know that you've been busting your ass and doing the work. And I know that it's frustrating because it feels like you're getting nowhere. But chances are you might just be putting your energy into the wrong things. Okay, the next thing you need to know is what trauma really is. Trauma occurs when we experience something that we don't have the mental, physical, or emotional resources for at the time. Trauma is not what happened to you, and it's not the symptoms either. Trauma is not psychological, it's neurological. And what that means is that it's not about the thoughts and the feelings you experience. It's actually an open or unfinished response in the brain and body that's causing these lasting symptoms. When your brain and body are unable to complete their processes, this can create symptoms like anxiety, intrusive thoughts and memories, flashbacks. You might have a difficult time regulating your emotions. And there's probably about another 100 physical, emotional, and psychological symptoms. And these can affect every part of your life, including your health, your financial security, your relationships, and your mental well-being. If you have been living with complex post-traumatic stress for a while, you know how even the simplest things can feel impossible and exhausting. And you know that trauma is seeping into every aspect of your life. Now, one of the saddest mistakes I see women make in trying to overcome their trauma, and maybe this sounds familiar, is that they believe that it's them, that they're damaged goods, that they need to just try harder and do the work in therapy to heal. And when that doesn't work, they feel even more like failures, like they don't belong, and that they will never have, do, or be the things that they desire. And this frustrates me, and it makes me feel so sad because these women, just like you, deserve so much more out of life. You see, most people think that in order to heal their trauma, they need to manage their symptoms and try to control everything in their lives, which for high achieving women, aka the hypervigilant superhero types, wink, wink. This is like trying to put an addition on your house while it's on fire. We try to push through the exhausting symptoms and we do more because we believe we can outwork our trauma, but we're suffocating in the smoke from the fire. And so often all we can do is try to manage the symptoms with things like medication. This is like taking the batteries out of the smoke detector because it's making too much noise. Or we open up all the windows to let the smoke out by talking about our trauma in therapy. But all this does is fan the flames. It's an exhausting cycle, and they call it burnout for a reason. But you need to know this. It's not you. It's your brain. Your brain works on an operating system. And no matter what we think or do, your brain will always follow the specific rules of this operating system. Now, many of the traditional trauma healing methods like medication and talk therapy or CBT actually work against this operating system because they are focused on the smoke and the smoke alarms, not the fire. Now, we're going to get a little bit deeper into this in part 3, but for now, in this training, we're going to break down the 3 rules of your brain's operating system so that you will understand how your brain deals with trauma, why it feels like you can't seem to get ahead, and how to put out the fire, eliminate the symptoms, and finally rebuild your life. So let's dive into how your brain's operating system works and how you can use this to hack your healing. So your brain's operating system is following 3 rules, no matter what. And here they are. So rule number 1 is no dying. And this is your brain's first and most important job. It's to keep you safe and alive. And while it's doing that, it doesn't really care how you feel about it. Now, if you were a Neolithic cave dweller, this would make perfect sense because when you're being chased by a saber-toothed tiger, your brain doesn't care whether you and Wilma Flintstone are wearing the same fur-colored frock. All it cares about is that you run. Now, here's how this plays out today. When your brain perceives a threat, even if it's not life-threatening, like an email from your boss at 4:59 on a Friday, or maybe you're daydreaming about a big scary goal you have of starting a YouTube channel, your survival brain kicks into high gear and it hijacks all of your resources, and it uses them for fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Now, in real time, this means that you can't concentrate, finish tasks, or remember why you walked into the kitchen. You can easily feel overwhelmed or emotionally flooded, or maybe you're reactive and irritable and you have a short trigger on your bitch switch. Asking for a friend? So you may have trouble sleeping or relaxing or feeling safe even when you're in familiar places. This is why trauma symptoms often mimic ADHD, OCD, and other disorders, because your executive function goes offline. Your brain is prioritizing survival mode over focus, emotional regulation, and long-term planning. Now, here's the kicker. When your survival brain is in charge, it defaults to the past for reference. Why? Well, because if you survived the last saber-toothed tiger attack, your brain assumes that doing the exact same thing will keep you alive again, even if what you did last time was shutting down emotionally, or overworking and people-pleasing, or numbing out by isolating yourself and binging on Uber Eats and falling into a scroll hole on TikTok. Your brain doesn't care if it was a healthy survival mechanism. It just cares that it worked, which is why when you are triggered and you keep repeating the same patterns over and over, even if you know they're not helping. Rule number 2 is no crying. So what this means is that your brain's second priority is emotional regulation, but only after you feel safe. Your brain does want you to be happy and sad and excited and in love and the full gamut of emotions of the human experience. But think about it. If you're being chased by a tiger, you're not supposed to process your feelings about it. You're running. But once you're safe, you'll probably laugh and maybe even cry about it later. Now, in modern life, this looks a lot like struggling to regulate your emotions when you're feeling vulnerable in a social situation. It might be feeling emotionally numb or disconnected and avoiding human contact, or you might be experiencing emotional whiplash, going from productive and upbeat to crashing hard in the same afternoon and cycling between hyperproductivity and burnout. Now, this is where trauma symptoms start getting mislabeled. Emotional dysregulation can look a lot like bipolar disorder, depression, anxiety, OCD, ODD, even borderline traits. And while those diagnoses are valid descriptions of symptoms, they're often just labels for a dysregulated nervous system that's stuck in survival mode. So when your emotional brain doesn't have enough resources, it can't regulate your mood or communicate your needs or connect with others. Now, I call this the can't want tos. You know the feeling. You know you should call your friend back, or you know that you should be getting up and taking a shower or turning off the TV and going to bed, but you can't seem to want to. And that makes you feel lazy and flaky and broken, but you're not. You're just running on emotional fumes. Okay, so rule number 3 is no dying again, because if you are not growing, you are dying. Okay, so what this means is that once you are safe and emotionally regulated, your brain's third priority is learning and growth. So this is where we pursue goals, dream bigger, and show the world who you really are. But here's the catch. Your brain can't prioritize growth until it feels safe and emotionally stable. You can't build a business, advance your career, save to pay off debt, or buy a house, or start a YouTube channel, or chase any of your big dreams while you're still running from tigers and putting out fires. And every time you try, it feels like you're hitting a brick wall. You end up exhausted, feeling like a failure, and then there's something wrong with you. Now, this is probably showing up in your life as chronic self-sabotage. Maybe you set ambitious goals, but repeatedly procrastinate or abandon them because your nervous system interprets success or change as unsafe. It's pulling you back into familiar patterns. Maybe you're overcommitting and burning out. You might push yourself too hard, trying to prove your worth or outrun your pain. Instead of sustainable growth, you end up emotionally and physically drained. And you might be struggling with consistency. Maybe you start projects or habits with enthusiasm, but you quickly lose momentum and you're easily distracted because they don't pay off quickly enough. Now, this is often characterized by paralyzing self-doubt. Maybe you constantly question your abilities, you downplay your skills, or you feel like a fraud. Even when you're making progress, your brain convinces you that you're not good enough or that it's only a matter of time before you fail. So why bother to try? Now, this happens because your brain is allocating its resources to survival and not to higher executive functions. So I want you to think about it this way. Every day you start your day with a pitcher of water. And this water represents your total physical, emotional, and mental energy for the day. And it gets distributed between 3 main functions. First is survival. This is getting your physiological needs met, but also responding to threats. Then we have your emotional regulation. This is your ability to manage your mood, stay present, interact with others, and get your emotional needs met. And then we have your thinking functions. This is your executive function. This is your brain's ability to pursue goals, be creative, focus, plan, make good decisions, all of that, right? Now here's the catch. When you've experienced prolonged trauma or chronic stress, you're starting with a pitcher that's half full and a very demanding survival brain. So your survival brain gets most of your day's resources, despite the fact that you have emotional needs or other humans you need to interact with, or maybe you have deadlines at work and bills to pay and a whole list of unfinished projects and chores around the house. So no wonder why you're exhausted, overwhelmed, and feeling disconnected and misunderstood. And you're not able to make progress towards your goals, even though you feel like you're doing everything right. Look, you're not weak, you're not lazy, you're just running a marathon on drops of water in your cup. So the biggest mistake that I was making and that I see so many women make is trying to address their mental health symptoms or reach their goals before they have regained control of their survival brain. They often focus on their symptoms because they are loud and uncomfortable, like the noise the smoke detector makes, but they ignore the silent fire. I was doing this too. I was trying so hard to do big things and chase my goals, and I was constantly burning out, and I was pushing people away with my emotional dysregulation. But it wasn't working. And I was just falling farther and farther behind and feeling left out and so misunderstood. I realized I was doing things that I had been taught by therapists and well-meaning friends and societal norms that were actually preventing me from healing. So in part 2, I'm going to share the 3 habits you are probably doing that are preventing you from healing and reaching your goals.